Ahoy, Elder Scrolls Legends fans! We are here about to kick off the semifinals at QuakeCon. I am so excited because our next match is Thuldir versus Karakondzhul, a rematch, I believe, from last year. Did they face last year?
They did not. They were on opposite sides of the bracket. This is actually the first time that they're going to be facing off against each other, which has me very excited.
Which, like, let's be honest, that doesn't happen a lot, so this really better be an important match.
Yeah, and further following up, right, this is what I call the veteran side of the bracket, because these are the last two that have experience from last year, and the other side is entirely new blood. So whoever wins this is kind of carrying the torch from last year's participants.
I mean, we also got one person here again, but, you know, little different. But knowing that you have that experience, do you think that there is an edge to be gained from having experience from last year?
Oh, absolutely. Being in this position and knowing how to tune out everything else, the crowd, the lights, and being able to focus on the game at hand is really important. And I look for that the experience to matter quite a bit for those players.
And given that they have that experience, I'm assuming we can expect some really great games coming in. We have two very veteran players, as you were saying, Charmer. We've seen their deck lists a little bit before, but let's run it down just in case. It's been a while. Maybe a couple people have forgotten. Maybe a couple of those people are named Lasergician. Who knows? We have Thuldir running the Battle Mage, Empire, Guildsworn, and Halalu. Do we think any of these are particularly well suited to go into Karakondzhul's lineup now that we've seen them all in action?
Personally, I think that they're all very well suited because it's a very well-rounded lineup in general. I think during the interview we just saw during the break, Thuldir said he was comfortable with taking any of these lists if he needed to in a pinch because he's very good at piloting them, whether he's on his back foot or the aggressor. And I think that that's going to pay off.
I'm really looking forward to seeing Thuldir give Karakon a little bit of his own medicine. You can see the list right now, the Empire Cyrodiil with a few one-ofs. Also the Battle Mage with some one-ofs that you don't typically see. So with the Aspect of Hersine or the Discerning Thief or the Magistar, really looking for that different type of consistency and looking for the different options to really play to whatever situation he finds himself in.
How about you, Silverfuse? Any decks you're really keeping an eye on going into the semifinal match?
I wouldn't say there's any crazy standout ones because, as we said earlier, the lineups are very just well-rounded overall. I think something fast that Karakondzhul has brought, like the Crusader or Redoran, does have the potential to do very well against Thuldir's lineup, but it's not something I'm going in expecting. Yeah,
that makes a whole bunch of sense. On the other side of this matchup, we have Karakondzhul. We've talked a bit about his deck building style, but we can also talk about his archetypes. Redoran, only person to bring that to the tournament. Very fast, aggressive list. We can see it on screen now. The only deck that was brought throughout the entire tournament that's capable of running Sower of Revenge, I believe, other than the Ebonheart from Boom's Life, which is not going to be doing that. Is that a card that you think has a lot of influence going into this match?
I mean, I think Sower of Revenge has influence in any match that it's played because it's a very powerful card. And with some of the recent balance changes, it's kind of went up in power level again. Cast into Time is not as popular as it once was. So yeah, absolutely. It does what you want it to do in aggressive mirrors. It represents slowing down your opponent and dealing damage to them at the exact same time. And that is very vital when you're trying to race somebody.
And here we can see that Curse Archer list that we were talking about before. Charmer mentioned earlier he thinks it's very well positioned against the field because it has a good matchup into Battle Mage, which is so prevalent. Jason, do you think that the Archer is well suited against Thuldir's list? There's a lot of yellow in the non-Battle Mage decks, which are known to be relatively well statted if you're behind a guard, things like that. Do you think that the Archer has a good matchup here? Do you think we'll even get to see it?
I think that there's a chance that this one could make quite a big difference. With the Murkwater Scourges, the ability to fight against the aggro, the more than expected aggro lineup that Thuldir brought, I think that there's a chance that it can really try to contain in a way that you don't typically see out of Karakon's decks.
And there's this Battle Mage list, which is, signature Karakondzhul all over it. One-ofs that no one else is running, things like the one-of Covenant Plate. You even have 3 copies of Craven Conscript in there. Silver, what do you think about this little item package that he's got going?
Karakondzhul went about the Battle Mage a lot different than most of our other players are going. Having the Drace Renegade package, too, is very interesting. So kind of expecting the mirror in some ways, being say like, oh, your heartbeat? No, it's not going to do anything against me. So I like the different take on this deck quite a bit.
All right, well, let's talk ban strategies as we do every time. We have two very, very powerful, very diverse lineups. No one is all in on any one strategy, which I imagine makes banning a little bit tricky. Jason, if you're Karakondzhul, you're scared of facing Thuldir, as everyone is, as we've heard. Which deck are you the most afraid of?
Certainly the Guildsworn. Not only does Thuldir love his Guildsworn and is known for his Guildsworn, but it really starts to limit the types of archetypes that were remaining in the list. I would really force him into beat me with the aggressive strategies, and I think removing Guildsworn from the equation would help.
Yeah, there is one aggressive deck at minimum Karakondzhul will have available between Veteran and Crusader. Maybe he can go under that list. On the flip side, Silver, if you're Thuldir, you're trying to take something away from Kara, what do you think that looks like?
I'd probably ban the Veteran just because of the strength of it, how quick it is. There's definitely the reason to ban Crusader as well, just because we saw him 3-0 earlier with it. You have to kind of take that into account that he was doing very well with that deck. But I think the Veteran's a little bit more scary, personally.
All right, well, we'll see how that turns out prediction-wise. I'm sure the internet will tell us sooner rather than later. Until then, the players are ready to get on the stage, so let's welcome them right now. All right, the two are going to be sitting down, gathering their wits about them, getting settled in and comfortable. Let's talk about first decks. Everyone always has to pick a deck to go with first, and that can be very, very impactful. We saw in the last match, I believe it was the last match, Dagoff coming out for Boom's Life being very, very nice to get the ball rolling for him. What do we think would be a good lead-off for these players here, Silver?
As Thuldir here, since we don't know the bans quite yet, I would say the Halalu, just because it can match well into one of Karakon's fast-paced decks. So, or go under the Archer or the Battle Mage. So just because the options you have with Halalu, knowing that you can win with pretty much anything that you go against, I would look into that as Thuldir.
Well, you just mentioned that depends on what the bans are, and those are something we now have available to us. Going to bring those up on screen really quick, see if we can inform our decisions. No Archer for Karakondzhul, much to my chagrin, and Thuldir, like you said, Charmer, Guildsworn, not going to happen for him. So given that, what are we thinking that maybe Karakondzhul might want to start with?
You start with Crusader.
Every time?
Listen, the deck hasn't lost today. So you stick with it until it loses. You lead off with Crusader and you say somebody's going to have to beat it, and if they don't, then I'll just be the Master Series champion.
Just say let it ride?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, we'll see how that turns out for them. One more thing before predictions, I want to ask key cards. Anything that are fun inclusions you want to make sure you get a chance to watch for, anything you think will really drastically influence the way these games go. Silverfuse?
I want to see the Drace Renegade package and the Battle Mage. That's one that I really want to see.
All right, Jason, any ideas on key cards?
Both players are playing Cloak and Dagger instead of Scimitars in some of their lineup, in some of their decks, so I would really like to see the way that that pans out as they go forward.
All right, let's get your predictions for this first semi-final match. Go down the road this way, Silverfuse. How's this going to pan out?
These players are both so amazing, and I mean, it could go either way, but I'm going to have to go with Thuldir with a 3-2, just because I've worked with Thuldir very closely, so I'm a bit of a Thuldir fan, but Karakondzhul, amazing player as well, so I think it's going to be close, but I think I like Thuldir's lineup a lot.
All right, slight edge for Thuldir.
I personally love Thuldir's lineup, and that's exactly why Karakondzhul is going to win this, because every time I feel like I'm counting that guy out, he proves me wrong yet again. I think that it's going to be a very tight series, but I'm picking Karakondzhul over Thuldir.
All right, Charmer somehow managing to jinx both players at the same time. We'll see how that pans out. Jason, prediction here?
Karakon knocked me out last year. I would expect that he's a force to be reckoned with. I want to see the veteran, and I think that that might carry him.
All right, so we have 2 for Karakondzhul-ish, and then 1 for Thuldir. All right, we'll see how that pans out. Thuldir, that player everyone is saying they're afraid of. Karakondzhul, that player that no one understands the way he builds decks, but it tends to work out anyway. I think we're going to be in-game very, very soon. And casters, let's get into this one. Let me know what you guys think about this. Any last words before we head in?
Yeah, I want to highlight that these are both players that are utilizing the Apprentice Necromancer. That's in the Redoran and the Empire lists, so not the exact same deck, but these are 2 very intelligent players that have brought this card.
All right, and on that note, we are going to get into Game 1, semifinals match number 1. Casters, let's go.
All right, so it looks like we are going to see Karakondzhul on the Redoran, so he's actually doing us a favor, letting us see something not Crusader, and has a great curve to start. Iliac, 5th Legion Trainer, and Young Mammoth, that's explosive for this deck.
Offering, you really can't ask for better.
Yeah, speaking of the ring, Thuldir here has it, but does not have any way to utilize it. His hand is actually kind of clunky for an aggro mirror. Not only do you have high-cost cards, but even more so, Witherhand Cultist is not necessarily known for being great in the aggressive mirrors. Garnag you usually use to limit your control opponent and their Magicka. That's not really helpful right now, so a bit of a clunky start for Thuldir.
Not really what you expect out of Halalu in terms of the low-cost frequency. So definitely having the ring turned it from a disaster into only a problem.
It's a lot of fun.
All right, so while Laser Magician gets his microphone sorted out there, because you can kind of hear him bleeding in a little, we've got Thuldir trying to figure out, how do I battle this? You can trade into the 5th Legion, and I think that is, you know, a path that you would consider, but it doesn't pull out a lot of damage off the board. So we do see the Dawnbreaker come down so that you can get rid of the Young Mammoth and try to slow down the tempo that Karakondzhul had built in that field lane.
It does keep that 5th Legion on board, so now we're going to see some additional attack bonuses if Karakondzhul decides to play both a 3 and a 1 on the turn. That Rebel Warden, a new card out of Moons of Elsewhere, a Khajiit with Pilfer that makes additional cheats.
No matter what.
Yeah, I like this plan of action. You develop the ward. You also break that first rune, so East March draws you a card and develops a big threat. You expect the East March Crusader to end up perishing here, right? But you get rid of this big Witherhand Cultist in return, and that's going to be a win for
always
Karakondzhul.
clever. This is the secret.
Thuldir deciding here that he wants that board, valuable for trading in the future, and then takes the value trade with the Withering Cultist instead of taking the 5/2.
This is actually going to present Karakondzhul with an interesting decision, because you could trade with the East March, or you could use Earthbone Spinner on the Cultist,
This one can be
trade with your
counted upon.
Iliac, and then bring that back later on with some Necromancer. And it looks like that is actually what he's going to do. So Earthbone can be a very powerful card because of the silence, but I like setting up getting value out of this Necromancer on a future turn.
And even though that Anasi has War and is a big body on the board, all it's going to do is take away the Rebel Warden, and maybe just temporarily.
Yeah, not being able to have control of the field lane here for Thuldir is a rough spot overall, and he has to contest too. He can't allow Karakondzhul to just keep on hitting away. Has to find a way to stabilize here and then flip the board later.
We must protect the
Karakondzhul also represents 2 potential root destruction, which could pair very well with the House Carl.
So opting to develop Garnag here, which is really more about trading, right? Fighting for the board. You're not really worried about limiting the Magicka, but it is a little bit interesting because while you're saturating your Magicka better, you could have developed an even bigger body, something like the Pit Lion if you had wanted, but then that turns around and dies to East March. So as we talked about, Thuldir's hand is kind of clunky, and he's trying to make the best, you know, that he can out of this negative situation.
Yeah, even now looking at Thuldir's hand, it's still not all that great. The Eastmarch Crusaders don't actually get any value. The Pit Lion is just, I mean, it can't be played in the future, but it has restraints to it. Where Karakondzhul has a pretty alright hand here, able to get more resources if he chooses to do so.
Yeah.
Halalu doesn't like playing on the back foot, and that's what Karakon's done. He's gotten under Halalu and is really pressuring the life total, and while Halalu does have some comeback tools, not much.
Yeah, this is a really interesting decision point for Karakondzhul because you have two paths and both of them are attractive. On the one hand, you could develop the Wily and the Housecarl and draw cards if you wanted to go face. On the other hand, you can take trades like choosing to do, get control of the field lane and play your 2/3 drops and get a lot of value on the board. Ultimately, Karakondzhul opted to go with a more conservative approach there, and I like that game plan, but that was not an easy decision. You could make an argument for even play.
Really sets up the Housecarl on the following turn, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not that pays off. Thuldir is in the same situation where the cards in his hand aren't as reactive as you'd hope, considering the life total situation.
That's been kind of a theme we've seen with the Halalu that we have seen here today, is that they've gone behind and haven't been able to catch up in any way.
Yeah, Thuldir's got to be considering either developing things that can trade in the future, or one other option would be maybe Crusader's Assault on the marked man to trade into something now, and then hope that you draw cards that are just better suited to deal with the board. Maybe some 1 and 2 drops just so you can play more, because you have no defensive cards. Everything you do is going to be planning for the future.
And only 2 prophecies in your deck, so you're really going to have to earn this comeback.
Yeah, finding a Shadow Shift would be very good as well. Being able to move in off and make a trade.
Taste a Nazi's blade.
Finds potentially some defensive options for the future with the Candlehearth Brawler.
We'll rebuild Skyrim.
There's the house.
This is going to be a big Housecarl for Karakondzhul. And all of this goes face, so you draw 2 cards, and you're still going to have 3 magic to develop. I imagine we'll see the Haunting Spirit come down.
So not only do you currently have advantage on the board, but also still plenty of resources for future turns.
And that is not a helpful top deck for Thuldir, unfortunately. 5th Legion Trainer, great proactive card, but in a situation like this is just doing nothing to help out your board state.
I would imagine that some form of Candlehearth Brawler would have to come down. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Candlehearth is going to come down. The question is like, what are you pairing with it? Because it doesn't trade with anything on its own. Yeah, so he's going to choose to go face instead. There was an argument to be made about maybe you also play 5th Legion Trainer so that it gets 3 attack, and then you could have traded it into, say, the Apprentice Necromancer, but instead just saying, all right, I want the guard, and I'm going to continue developing other things. Gambler makes sense because you need help, right? You know the hand is funky, that's going to be your best option.
Read
like
my lips. Mouth paw.
So Mudcrab Merchant, looking at random cards, potentially giving Thuldir an answer out of this situation. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel pretty good because it's not giving him what he wants, right? Like salvage is not going to help Thuldir. In the meanwhile, Karakondzhul here getting Ghostgate Defender, that's a fantastic pickup because you can use that to play the Exalt, deal 2 damage to the Candlehearth. That means only your Haunting Spirit or Apprentice Necromancer is going to waste its damage, if you will, by trading into this, so you can push a maximum amount of damage. Doesn't deny the card draw from the Gambler, puts them on the cusp here without breaking the room. Probably going to see the Rift Name come down as well because that attacks before and has and Karakondzhul has set himself up nicely.
And even though there's only 2 prophecies in Thuldir's deck, still not worth the risk. Karakon's consistently chosen the conservative path here, and it really has lended itself to a large board that's going to be difficult to overcome.
I only need one.
Yeah, and when you're ahead as much as Karakondzhul is, why ever take the risk? You never lose if you can never lose in that position, so why take the risk of giving your opponent an out, even though unlikely?
And just like that, Karakondzhul is up 1-0 in the series, and kind of emphatically, right? He really got underneath Halalu, which says a lot. I know we talked about it a bit during the first series that Karakondzhul was a part of. We said this veteran list is scary. It's very aggressive. It's very fast. And then we never got to see it. But this is why we were saying those things. You got to see it this time around on display. It is a blazing fast start, and it did so without the ring, right? Because he runs a lot of one drops. He got on the board early and just continues to push the pace of the game. I'm hearing some sounds, so I think we're going to be jumping into the game here soon.
You really saw the resource extension that the Apprentice Necromancer gave, too. That even though Karakon was playing things every turn of the game, still had options in his hand at the end.
All right, so we are jumping into the game here. Karakondzhul on the veteran list still because he plays it until it loses. Thuldir on the other side has now loaded up the mid-battle mage list, and Karakondzhul again, low to the ground curve. This time he does have the ring, which is going to be even more impactful because you have 5th Legion potentially into this marked man, a Necromancer to bring back that marked man. This is a great start for Karakondzhul.
Really is ideal. If that 5th Legion sticks, even for a couple turns, and with the Sorcerer, there's nothing better than a 1-1 with Ward except a 2-1 with Ward for the same cost.
That can potentially become like a 4-1 with, you know, post-Ward stats there. It is, everything is coming up Karakondzhul. I know we talked about it last year. We kind of named him the top deck king, and he's retaining his title right now.
Wait, did you hear that?
Yeah, Karakondzhul off to a very explosive start here. And then Thuldir is finding the right part of his deck, but it's just too slow. Not having a 2-drop is a very rough thing when you can see a massive board developed on turn 2 of all things.
And Thuldir only playing one Skaven Pyromancer in his list, so difficult to deal with all of these small creatures. It's wide strategy.
So Karakondzhul here is in the driver's seat, but he knows his opponent just got a Firebolt. He knows that the later this game goes, the more mid-BM will find cards like Cradle Crush Giant, for example, to kind of slow you down. So going to take this trade here. Wisely keeps the ward on the Iliac. I like that play because you know your opponent just got a Firebolt and you don't want to lose that right away. Right now the Firebolt is only targeting suboptimal things, right? Marked Man is a 2-1, sure, but not exactly the sort of threat that you're worried about. Oh, and the ally whiffs. That is not good.
And really the power of Necromancer, you can see it with the 5th Legion out, getting I think 7-6 worth of stats for 3 cost. It's pretty good.
Yeah, Karakondzhul being able to get the marked man and then play it again, just pretty much a free resource there. And once again, Thuldir struggling a bit finding the parts that he needs, not finding the 2-drops early, and then just, I mean, Karakondzhul start, what are you going to do about it?
Feels like he's already preparing for the potential answers by splitting lanes. So now there's a serious threat in both sides. So Thuldir really has to attack him on both in order to have a chance at coming back here.
Yeah,
it's a lot of pressure.
I loved everything about that turn because not only do you split lanes, but in your primary lane where you do have the strongest attack power, you have 2 creatures with ward. So if a guard does come down, you've got the ability to trade into things, keep your creatures alive, continue to push damage. Like, it was just really flawless execution for how you pressure an opponent in multiple ways, take advantage of the lane system that Legends has.
It is important to note here too that Karakondzhul is running out of resources. He needs to find something like the Ulfric's Housecarl to be able to extend, get more cards going. Because if Thuldir does find his answers or get a nice prophecy, that could put Karakondzhul in a bad position.
Yeah, the good news is Karakondzhul just top decks whatever he needs whenever he needs it, so I'm sure Crusader's Assault is coming up too. Oh,
wow.
That is
a lot of damage.
So earlier I was kind of giving Mercenary Captain a hard time about being, you know, not always good on curve, it's better later. This is that later. When you have a full board and you can really take advantage of it. Instead of that 4 Magicka 4/4, that was a 4 Magicka 7/7.
Look at those wards on Karakon's board. Is he playing intelligence or is he playing Rhetoric?
Well, I have this friend who's a designer on the game, and he has told me that endurance is also one of the attributes where ward is part of the theme.
Little known fact.
Yeah. And Thuldir taking the honorable Sudoku. Yeah, you like that one, don't you? Yeah. So congratulations, Karakondzhul. You are now up 2-0 in your series, and making our day go by that much faster. Are you ever going to lose a game? That is the question that we have for Karakondzhul at this point.
It would be pretty crazy if we just saw someone go through 9-0.
Yeah, I
That'd be
mean,
nuts.
it would be unheard of. Like, I cannot imagine a world where that would be a thing, and yet he's already more than halfway there, winning 5 games in a row so far today.
But don't speak too fast. We have Thuldir's Empire deck still on the docket, and that Empire deck beat 2 different decks earlier. So we've seen it play in a variety of ways and really hold its own.
Yeah, the Empire deck, I'm very interested in seeing how it matches up against Karakondzhul's list because it's very good at fighting for the board. It looks and feels like a Karakondzhul list in many ways, right? Running the Apprentice Necromancer, really good at getting a value out of cards. There are some 1 and 2-ofs in this Empire list, so to me, this is going to be an exciting matchup. Karakondzhul here, considering the mulligans.
Really want to pair that Apprentice Necromancer with a 1-cost, so I would expect it.
I like the keeping of the Haunting Spirit because that's such a high value card in these aggressive mirrors. But Necromancer, if you don't have a 1-drop, pretty safe to throw back. Also, you're offering, so you're hunting for a 1-drop anyway, and you got.
Go into both lanes, and the Haunting Spirit is much more likely to actually like proc and hit a creature if your opponent is split the lanes.
Looks
So
like the Rift Thane here will probably come to contest the field lane, or it looks like Shadow. Maybe we're just up for a race here.
yeah, that is actually a really interesting development because I also expected him to contest that field lane, but he's opting to go to the Shadow lane, and maybe with the Haunting Spirit and the Sora Revenge, that is what he is thinking. He might say, all right, I can win this race, right? Sora Revenge is such a powerful card in aggressive mirrors that I'm just going to lean on this.
And we saw this Empire deck take the defensive stance earlier, so I could expect that Karakon is pushing this direction, but Thuldir has an opportunity to adapt to whichever direction Karakon takes. Plus, with the Varen Aquilarius, Charmer's favorite card, the race is slightly more interesting.
Yeah, this is one of those scenarios where Baron does have the potential to be better, right? Because if you are in a strict race, then getting the 5 health and slowing your opponent down, I still don't think it's as good as some of the other tempo options, things like Giant Snake, because you not only slow the tempo down, but you deny them the ability to counter trade into your own creatures, things like that. But this is certainly a place where
I will light the dragon fires,
and
as
you see
all
him come
true
down.
emperors must.
Karakondzhul is likely just going to end up sharpshootering that, though. If I had to guess, it's going to be a sorcerer into a sharpshooter without much thought.
Absolutely.
Let's see what you've got.
But does have a lot of stats on board still. It is an interesting race where he would have preferred to develop the Sora Revenge instead, but is kind of forced to deal with this Varen here.
Yeah, I think he wanted to develop the Sower, but because Varen came down, he kind of changed his game plan. He does have a stacked lane with this Haunting Spirit, though, so he can swing, get 3 damage out of it, and then play a creature to replace it, something like Mercenary Captain, for example, and just boost this board to a massive state and push for lethal if Thuldir doesn't do something to answer.
And Thuldir himself looking at life totals and thinking, how do I win this next turn? So how do I remove just enough damage that I don't die on next turn swing, and so put myself in a position to win?
Yeah, I like this Shadow Shift. You've got to get rid of some of this damage on the board. I wouldn't even be shocked if this Wily and the Pit Lion just trade into the Iliac. I know that sounds weird trying to get rid of a 1/1, but I would be really scared about lethal if I was Thuldir in this situation.
Especially against Karakon, the top deck king.
Yeah, I mean, I'm naturally assuming he's probably got Dawnbreaker and something else already in hand, or he's gonna pull it off the top of the deck. So, this is a tough spot to be in. But he's trying to set himself up to win this next turn. We're gonna see the defenses come down as well.
Thuldir has a lot of reach for next turn. We're looking at potential ring into Cliff Racer Gavel, so representing 6, so doesn't have to do very much more. It really comes down to whether Karakondzhul can find lethal on this turn.
All right, so let's do some quick math here. Karakondzhul with the 6 Magicka could develop something like Mercenary Captain to buff the existing board, swing with the Haunting Spirit for 4 damage. The other 2 is going to be 6, and then if he sacrifices it, he'll get +3. That's only 9. He has 1 off of lethal with that particular path.
Yeah, I don't think there is a lethal here. I think he's just going to be just a tad bit off, and just not going to be enough for him.
So instead, do you look to try to sower in the field to prevent one of those pit lions from hitting you?
So that's a very interesting situation to be in, right? You want to develop the sower for sure, because if you cannot win, you need to slow them down. But also, sower represents maybe accidental lethal, because if you don't have a silence on the other end to deal with sower, and they have to give them the last gas, you might be able to finish them off in that regard.
And that is just most likely going to be it here.
Yeah, unfortunately, Karakondzhul could not get him down to 5, which is where he needed to get him. And it's looking like Thuldir is going to put this away with the Cliff Racer and or the Gavel and or the Divine Fervor. There's a lot of options here, actually, for Thuldir.
Yeah, Thuldir trying to decide which gives him the best chance of lethal, what plays around Prophecy is the best, probably looking over Karakondzhul's list, which he can do, trying to decide what would stop me here and how do I get around that.
I can imagine that Thuldir is scared of a Cloud Rest Illusionist on that first room.
Yeah, I believe that's the only one. There's no Green Pact Ambusher to save Karakon here.
All right, so I think you likely take the attack with the pit lion here. Yep, and then get him down to 6. You're going to use... Oh, interesting. I was expecting him to skip the last turn with a Cliff Racer and then use that ring charge for the Gavel, just so you don't give him another opportunity, but this will get it done as well. And Thuldir actually takes a game off Karakondzhul, the first person to do so all day.
Bloodied his lip.
No 9-0s today.
Yeah, no 9-0s today. And to quote somebody we know, suddenly we have a series on our hands.
So as Karakondzhul, what deck do you queue into, or what deck do you queue in next?
For me, it would be Crusader, because that's still a deck I haven't lost with. So I was kind of surprised he didn't lead off with it to begin with, because he feels like it's a weak deck in his lineup, and he kind of wants to see, can I just get a free win with it and then go from there? So in many ways, I just expected him to lead off with that all day, but he didn't this time. He went with the Redoran, got 2 wins out of the Redoran. That's fantastic, but I would load the Crusader up again here.
Yeah,
I think I
you're
would
right.
as well, too.
Greedily, I'd like to see the Battle Mage play.
Surprisingly, really, Battle Mage hasn't performed all that well today.
I'm not surprised by that, actually.
Well, I'm saying to what most people would have assumed.
Here's why I'm not surprised by Battle Mage underperforming. It was going to be an expected list, and these players knew that, so they all brought a game plan to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
These are the best players, essentially, in the game, and so if there's a list that people think is powerful and going to be prominent, you bring decks that can target it, and I think that we're seeing that they did exactly that.
Karakon starting off with some non-traditional choices. Looking at the Fire Slinger and the Conscript as a way to combine with both the Cloak and Dagger potentially to get a lot of pressure on the board very quickly.
Yeah, this is a powerful conscript because we have the Cloak and Dagger, we have the Satanine. I love saying the words "we have the Satanine" out loud because there is probably no bigger advocate for that card than me. And many, many ways to activate this conscript and get value out of it.
And Thuldir knows about it too because he saw the cloak and dagger, he saw the card split, so he knows that that is in Karakondzhul's hand.
I'll see you
Probably one of the
dead.
reasons why he decided to break that ward there, because he knows that there is a dagger in hand.
So now that we're back to Karakondzhul here, you have to try to identify exactly how you want to target this, right? You want to get at least one item on your conscript, and we're going to do that with the State of Need. Opted instead to take the value trade on the other side. I'm kind of surprised we didn't see a firebolt there, and then maybe that damage go face instead.
That is a huge conscript representing huge chunks of life, and Thuldir needs to answer it immediately.
Yeah, so while Varen was certainly important last game, this is one of those scenarios where I think playing Varen does not do enough for you, in my opinion. You can play Varen, maybe if you play him in the Shadow Lane, then you can potentially trade into it the following turn, but you know that the cloak is still there, so it's not going to be quite enough. You gain some health, which is a little bit of a stall, but this is a big board on the side of Karakondzhul with that conscript, and I don't feel like the 5 health is going to be as impactful.
Well, he certainly doesn't need cards from the rune break, so the 5 health will definitely go a long way against the alternative plays on the turn. I guess you could potentially Deepwood Trapper to create a roadblock for the conscript as well.
Yeah, myself personally, I think that's the game plan that I would go with. I would go with Deepwood and then some other development, because if Deepwood dies, right, then you set yourself up for Apprentice Necromancer bringing it back. You create this stall chain with this card, and that's exactly what Thuldir is going to do. I like this play a lot.
Yeah, I think it's by far the best play, just being able to stall out here and getting rid of them as fast as you can without taking any more damage to face.
So seeing a shackled conscript definitely reminds you of the Dres Renegades that are in Karakondzhul, or in this deck.
Yeah, and it's a bit interesting because conscript gets unshackled when you put an item on it, and he's wearing an item, but now he's been shackled again.
Differently
So,
shackled.
little bit of poetic justice there. Since we have somebody from the design team on the panel here, why don't we talk about the interaction with this cloak? Will cloak remove the shackle next turn if Karakondzhul wants to attack with that?
I don't believe so. I think that it's set up like an aura where right now it's a different type of shackle.
Fair enough. So Karakondzhul will likely then look to develop Syl, I would imagine, off of his final ring charge on the following turn, unless he top decks something very, very juicy. But still, great card to play this next turn. And there is the Trapper off the Necromancer that we were talking about at the end of last turn.
It really speaks to your the efficacy of Varen that 2 straight opportunities to play Varen chose not to.
Can be trusted. Do you hear me?
Yeah, like I said, in my opinion, it can be good in certain situations, but very often I will hear players talk about how it's just an auto win in aggressive mirrors, right? They say it's an auto include in your aggressive willpower decks, and that has just not been my experience in testing. This is a scary Shadow Lane for
I'll
Karakondzhul.
see you dead.
Yeah, slowly chipping away of these creatures he's taken the time to develop. He has almost no resource extension in this deck overall, so getting low on cards, Syl might be able, I mean, in the future, maybe he will proc and give Karakon his own cards, but for now, he has control of that lane and will chip away at Thuldir, but Thuldir at 19 health is okay with taking a little bit of damage here and there.
What's exciting for me right now in this particular matchup is that we're seeing Thuldir do what he did once before with this Empire list, which is, even though it's aggressive, it can play like a mid-range list, right? It can fight for control of the board, get things into a position where you pivot and be the reactive player, and it's still being successful. So we've seen it work for him once before, and it's potentially paying off now. He's got to find a way to deal with this still, though, because that represents a lot of damage over time.
There's a surprising density of guards that you wouldn't necessarily see when you first glance at the list, but when it's played this way now multiple times, we've seen the ability to protect against the Shadow Lane.
Yeah, for me, I think that speaks to the power of the Necromancer that we've been highlighting, because you can bring back these Deep Woods, you can bring back the Marked Man, you've got multiple copies of them as well. And that's actually potentially a really good pickup there for Karakondzhul with that Brett concept.
In the light of the three.
And the Sill here is just a little bit trapped overall, not really being able to push the damage it would love to push through. It just trades into a 1-2, really not what Karakondzhul wants to see here. He is running 2 silences in the deck, so he would love to see something like that. But there's a good chance that Thuldir just bounces back here.
And Karakon has set himself up for the potential for a Dress Renegade if Thuldir decides just to shackle his Sill. Dress Renegade then represents 7 damage.
And what is that?
It's almost like we've said that somebody is a top deck king,
Let's take care of business,
and
shall we?
this is
It's also quite funny because while talking to him, he said that the one of Covenant plate wins him games all the time. And
That was a huge prophecy that represents 4 more reach. Huge.
yeah. So Varen does finally come down. This is one of those scenarios where Varen can be effective. Belligerent Giant could remove Varen, but then you can't develop the Renegade, so Karakondzhul is going to have to make a really tough decision here.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
yeah, this is
This is an incredible turnabout.
So one of the attractive things about the Belligerent Giant potential play is that you at least slow down Thuldir's board a bit, and you have something, if you play it in the Shadow Lane, for example, and you put up Varen, you can break some runes to avoid the health gain, and you're setting yourself up for more Sill damage, right? So there is an argument to be made about playing Belligerent Giant here. The other thing is it's just better Magicka saturation. If you're playing either of these 4-drops, you're not playing anything else this turn, and that's not going to feel great.
We really saw Varen change the game.
The question is whether or not he wins in the game.
That is a good question.
Now, he was hovering over the Belligerents, and yeah, we do see it come down now. I imagine it's still going to get rid of Varen just because that's the highest cost card, right? You want to potentially slow down the resources, and we're seeing that, right? So until he drew that Oathman, for example, he wouldn't have been able to play both cards in his hand. And now Thuldir is doing the math. Is Oathman enough? It really
looks
only
like
represents the same amount of damage that Cliff Racer did before, just at 1 Magicka cheaper. So it's a +4, which is enough if there's no prophecies.
I will have my
And
And
there's
there
not.
are none, so Thuldir
Incredible.
ties up the series. Ties up the series, and we are 2-2 in a very back and forth series.
this is more what we were expecting too.
Yeah,
A
this is-
3 would have been a little anticlimactic, so it's a good thing it's scripted.
Well, it's so interesting for me because Karakondzhul is known for his top decks. He's known for his aggressive play. We're seeing that. Thuldir last year made a name for himself multiple times by coming back in series and coming back in games when it looked like all hope was lost, and he just clung to all tournament life. And we're seeing that again now. So this is very classic Thuldir, very classic Karakondzhul, all in the same moment. I don't want this to end. I don't want this to be game 5. I want to see them play all day.
Yeah, can we just go best of 7?
Yeah, 9, 12, 13.
Yeah, just all day.
Yeah.
24/7, Thuldir versus Karakon.
Just unban the decks and keep going. Just
All right, so we're going into game 5. The winner of this is moving on to the finals. It'll be the first finalist of the day. We have Thuldir on this Empire list, leading off with a Wily off the ring, Karakondzhul. So this is interesting because this is the second time where Karakondzhul has had the ability to contest the drop in the field lane and has instead went to the shadow. How do you guys feel about that?
Have business with house.
well, with the Gabbles and the Shining Saints, I could see that there's a reason why you don't necessarily want to get tricked out of the field lane. So, and it feels like Karakon knows his list pretty well. This is a pretty aggressive Crusader with definitely highlights attacking the face and making the Shadow Lane a big part of his game plan.
Yeah, during his interview before, he was talking about how much he loved Mighty Ally and how it can just win races. It can take over a game. We see that coming down now. 3 Magicka for a 6-3 with Breakthrough. And the Breakthrough is really important because we've seen so many guards come out of this Empire list. This is the way you try to get it done if you're Karakondzhul.
And a little bit of a sad apprentice necromancer there. Not quite mastered the skill of necromancy and couldn't bring anything back. Was set there to contest the 6-3, but the brawler will stop it in its tracks.
Yeah, Kindlehearth Brawler doing what it does best, getting a little bit of chip damage in while protecting your primary threats.
You're so sweet. I can just
So
Unfortunately,
what a
turns into
terrific
a sweet
gourmet.
roll.
Unfortunately, Thuldir hitting this Grizzly Gourmet, that's a huge play.
Business with House Halalu.
Oh.
Goodness.
The Lesser Ward here will, if Thuldir does decide to take it, could honestly save it for some instances. Like even just Cliff Racer, Lesser Ward, make a trade and leave a 4-4 on board. There are cases where you save it for later, but it will be used now.
Yeah, I think you use it here simply because of the tilt factor.
What an incredible turn.
You know that came from the pawnbroker. You know that you had your board presence basically just wiped out.
You use your 3 cost to just turn their 4 cost into a sweet roll, and then basically for free off of the pawnbroker, remove the Mighty Ally, the strongest. That was an incredible turn 4.
Now I will say this: if there is a card in Karakondzhul's list that can get you back into the game, Markarth Bannerman is it. When you don't have an answer and Markarth Bannerman is allowed to attack in almost any scenario, it is a game-changing creature. That looks like a measly 4/4 there, but every time it attacks, you add 2 Nord Firebrands to your hand. And this Crusader list has a number of ways to utilize them, take advantage of them. This is potentially a place where he can get control of this game once again.
It's really a fortunate life total being 1 lower so that the Rift Thane is in guard mode.
Yeah, using these tools, using the Firebrand. If he wants, he can play the second one to also trade into the Grizzly Gourmet there as well. He still has Magicka left over for the Crusader's Assault. Yes, I like this.
And you can see from his perspective that the potential of leaving the Bannerman to potentially trigger again the next turn could be a route to victory. But we know from Caster Vision that Cliff Racer may be coming down to prevent that.
Yeah, Thuldir's got to be thinking that this Cliff Racer is going to trade into the Rift Thane, allowing Black Dragon to get the value trade and survive into the Bannerman.
Yeah, it's kind of an awkward hand here for Thuldir. It has the Cliff Racer to be able to make trades from hand, but one of Divine Fervor sounds pretty good, but the second one is just a bit clunky. Would much rather have a creature here to develop instead.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for Thuldir is you basically have an answer for most of Karakondzhul's board, but the bad news is you're not developing your own board a ton in response, and Karakondzhul has a fistful of cards. And we know he's got at least 1 Nord Firebrand, so this is the only line if you're Thuldir. I think you have to take this play, but you might not be as comfortable or confident with that as you would like to be.
So that's a lot of reach.
It's a lot of reach and a lot of ways that he can deal with this board. The existing Nord Firebrand, for example, can choose to trade with the Cliff Racer. You've got Nord Firebrand in your hand and or Stormcloaks and or Earthbones that can deal with the Black Dragon, and then you just have to find a way to get back to contesting this field lane that he abandoned so early.
A lot of it is about predicting how much reach you think Thuldir can have on the following turn to know how much of your resources to sink into eliminating these low health creatures in the Shadow Lane.
So what I would expect to be the course of action here would be some combination of Orc Clan Captain and a couple of Chargers in the field lane to get rid of the Mournhold Trader, thus getting the guard back there as well. And then the Nord Firebrand trading with this Cliff Racer in the shadow, and then your other charge creature clearing the Black Dragon. But he's hovering that Clan Captain over in the Shadow Lane, so does not look like he's going to be taking my path by any means.
It would also be tempting with a spinner to be able to progress your board slightly at the same time you get to remove the threats in the shadow.
All right, so he's basically saying by doing this, I don't think you have 5 damage. Unfortunately, we know Thuldir does, so this is going to come down to whether or not there's a prophecy.
Let's see. It is,
There
but
is,
it's
but
not
it is not a
enough.
defensive one. So by not taking the clears, This is going to be Thuldir with the reverse sweep on this Empire list.
Oh,
Wow. Impressive win. Congratulations,
that was a crazy
Thuldir.
series. I mean, seeing Karakon go up to 2-0 really quickly, and then all of a sudden, wait, Thuldir won it?
Yeah, and again, the Empire list only. I'm just not allowed to be excited. That's what happens.
Evidently. But I want to draw back to one thing. During the interview, Thuldir said, I can rely on any of my lists. And he is showing that down 2-0, brings it back for a 3-0 sweep on that Empire deck. That's ridiculous.
I think he needs to change his answer to I just rely on the Empire list because that has been his bread and butter throughout this tournament.
Has
It
he
has been
lost with it
performing
yet?
really well.
No.
I don't think so.
So
He has
that's
not
what
lost.
you start with in the final, right? That's what you do.
You don't save it for the dramatics so that you don't make
No,
sure
you
the
just
Empire.
3-0 in the final with it.
Oh, that does sound less stressful.
So where did it go awry for Karakondzhul in there? He was up 2-0, and then what happened to change the course of that game so dramatically?
As far as I'm concerned, with the series, he had the one kind of like clunky matchup with the Veteran list. He didn't quite get what he was looking for. But there at the end with the Crusader list, I really felt like he should have traded into the Mournhold. Like I said, if he does a different set of sequencing there, it does not play the Earthbound and instead opts to go with like Clan Captain, Vanguard, Nord Firebrand, he can clean that up. It was just, in my opinion, very risky to say he doesn't have 5 damage when you're playing against a deck that has Cliff Razors, 5th Legion Trainers, Divine Fervor, etc.
And then shout out to Surin Pawnbroker for getting that lesser ward to enable that trade onto the Mighty Ally.
Yeah, I mean, that was huge in terms of getting the board presence back in Thuldir's favor.
That really is the story of the game. That was a pivotal turn 4 on Ring, and you saw everything change. And really, Thuldir took control, and he never let go.
Yeah, absolutely. We are getting the man himself, Thuldir, up on the stage for a couple quick words. Any last thoughts about the match before we take it over to the man himself?
I'm sad it's over.
Yeah. Oh, man, that was such an absurdly good series. Jason, what was your favorite moment from that series? If you had to pick just one.
Oh, I mean, I like watching the conscript become huge, and the shackle shenanigans, that was great, but ultimately it was that turn 4. It was that Grizzly Gourmet, and it really made a difference, and it sealed it, and it was exciting to watch.
Yeah, we're seeing the excitement on the camera right now, getting just that last little bit of damage in there with the 5th Legion Trainer through the prophecy that ended up not mattering. Oh, man, that is such a fun way to end it too, getting just that little bit of reach that you knew you needed. We are able to get a couple words from Thuldir himself. Congratulations, you're going to the finals.
I'm super excited. After being down 0-2 against Karakondzhul, I actually didn't believe it was possible anymore.
You didn't? Really?
And yeah.
Look at that, managing to bring it 3-0 through with that Empire deck. Tell me, what is it about the Empire deck that's been working so well for you? You haven't lost on it yet.
I don't know what it exactly is, but I'm incredibly excited it's working so well today.
Yeah, I'm happy for you too. Charmer, Jason, anything for Thuldir?
They are fine.
It's impressive to watch you be able to take that Empire list and to play it both ways in terms of like being able to be defensive when you needed to or be aggressive. Is that the way it played in testing?
Yes, definitely. It has a lot of guards and some removal as well, some more Shadow Lane interaction with the Shining Saint, for example. And yeah, so it can definitely take the defensive role, and when you're ahead on, then you take the aggressive role, and it is very good at snowballing the board position with cards like Empire Oathman or Divine Fervor.
Well, you chose expertly. Well done.
So you're the first finalist. We don't know who's going to be the second finalist. Do you have a preference? Is there a player that you feel more confident playing against in the finals out of the 2 that are left?
Well, there's definitely Bo. We agreed before the tournament started that we're meeting in the finals again, and yeah, I'm now absolutely sure there's no doubt it's going to happen.
All right.
Now we'll meet in the finals once, we'll meet in the finals again. Well, congratulations, Thuldir. We'll see you in the finals in just a few minutes. There we go. And until then, shout out to Alienware for making all of this happen. We're going to go to a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to bring you semifinals number 2 in just a few minutes.